Very much. My name is Ruth Simpson, and I'm one of the founders of the Family Farm Defenders, and I serve on the board. I think there's been a lot of discussion. About food sovereignty, and I think you have in front of you a book that has been done by the National Family Farm Coalition and Grassroots Works and Via Campesina on what food sovereignty means. Please take it. It's got great profiles of people like Joel Greeno and others who are here. But any definition of food sovereignty includes issues of community autonomy, cultural integrity, and environmental stewardship. So you have those sort of as a basic building blocks. In general terms, it does mean that farmers get to decide what seeds they plant, what crops they raise, what animals they raise, and for consumers, it's deciding what you eat. So those are very important issues. These choices have helped inform the work of the Family Farm Defenders. Before the Family Farm Defenders was established, John Kinsman began protesting at the University of Wisconsin, where research was being conducted on genetically modified bovine growth hormone, RBGH. He often protested alone or with members of his family, but soon his protest was joined by others, including myself, as I was working in Minnesota on this issue at that time. Not only did John's work uncover the corporate ownership of university research, it also unleashed a huge political battle in Wisconsin and elsewhere on the right of consumers to know how their food is being produced. I started working with John and U.S. Senator Russ Feingold, then a state senator, on legislation to stop the introduction of RBGH, and then later on labeling legislation, which would guarantee consumers had a right to know that their food contained RBGH. Of course, advocates of RBGH continued to argue that labeling was unnecessary because it would give consumers the wrong idea about the product. In other words, it was a product they couldn't sell because they knew consumers didn't want it. Because of grassroots pressure, Wisconsin did pass a labeling law. This allowed citizens to ask for milk or dairy products that were produced without RBGH. So food sovereignty means that people know how their food is produced. Over the years, FFD has worked to put pressure on Starbucks, Dannon Yogurt, and ice cream makers to not use milk produced with RBGH. One thing that was exposed during this fight was the fact that money dairy farmers pay into a promotion program actually was paying to help for consumer acceptance of RBGH. Dairy farmers pay about 2 cents, a little under 2 cents for every gallon for this generic promotion. Many dairy farmers were outraged to learn that their dairy checkoff money was used in this way. Again, it was a food sovereignty issue because they were actually taking money from them that would hurt their own economic viability. So the group of farmers decided to mount a campaign which we called Dump the National Dairy Board. And this obviously was quite a project because they required us to obtain the signatures of 10% of the dairy farmers in the U.S. Of course, they couldn't tell us how many dairy farmers there were because they said they didn't keep track, but they gave us the number of 160,000. And so we had to get 16,000 signatures. And so after some struggle, we actually did get the signatures. But then we learned when the election was occurring that dairy co-ops could block vote, which means that the co-op could vote for their entire membership. FFD believed this was anti-democratic since our whole entire electoral system is based on the concept of one person, one vote. But since it was already in the law, the co-ops did block vote to keep the dairy checkoff, which is another important lesson. We may not always win, but we continue the fight. Now, our efforts have never been alone. As everyone knows, the U.S. has a declining number of farmers, and the average age of a farmer is 58. We need farmers working with consumers to support a food system that will work to help promote and maintain farmers while giving consumers safe, healthy, and culturally appropriate food. FFD has always worked collaboratively with consumer organizations to give consumers choices in their food. This is also very important to food sovereignty, working together to create a vision of a just food system. So when we established the Family Farm Defenders in 1994, our goal was to create a farmer-controlled, consumer-oriented food and fiber system based on democratically controlled institutions and principles. We are made up of farmers and consumers, and we chose our name, the Family Farm Defenders, because we believe that small family farms were under attack and needed defending from corporate influence. John Kinsman, who you met earlier, I will call him our goodwill ambassador, has been our leader, traveling the world advocating for food sovereignty. He has strongly influenced that we should listen to what other people and groups have to say, respect their views, and learn about their cultures. FFD has tried to do that by having meetings around the U.S., and also we have went to Spain and Mexico to learn more about their food systems. He's also been a mentor to many of us, not only myself, but as I mentioned, Joel Greeno is here, and he got involved with FFD when we were organizing on low milk prices, and he has become a true leader, speaking for dairy farmers and for justice, as well as our executive director, John Peck, who's here, who is a dynamo of action and also an educator. And he brought 60 pounds of paper here, so we were hoping you all take it so we don't have to take it back to Madison. Recently, Joel testified at a workshop on dairy antitrust that was hosted by the USDA and the U.S. Department of Justice. The Ag Secretary, Tom Vilsack, was there, and he asked an interesting question. What would our ag policy be if we had a goal of creating 100,000 farmers in the U.S.? And I'll just note that, you know, we had the number of 160,000 dairy farmers. We're down to 50,000 at this point. We've lost 110 dairy farmers in the last 20 years. But isn't it an interesting idea? What would an ag policy look like if we actually had an idea to create farmers? Would it be corporate control or farmer control? Creating farmers to help feed us is not an idle question. If we want food sovereignty, we need more farmers in urban and rural settings to growing real food people can eat. So FFD has been working to advocate to know where your food is produced, and we believe it is produced best by small family farms where you know the farmer and can go out and visit their farm. Food sovereignty as its most basic form. FFD would not be getting this award without the work of John Kinsman. He has been a true leader of the food sovereignty movement, and anyone who knows him knows his commitment to equality, justice, and peace. And so he will be explaining more and getting the last word in today.